get some people to share some of their story of what it means for them to know Jesus Christ. If you've been here for the past few weeks, we've been doing a series on encounters with Jesus. Just looking at some people in the Bible who encountered Jesus personally and what it meant for them and how their lives were transformed as a result of meeting Jesus personally. And we thought it would be a great idea to ask some people from our own church to say, well, what does it mean for you to encounter Jesus? What does it look like to have Jesus in your life now? Because it's great looking at people from several thousand years ago. And they were real stories, they were true stories, they were real people. But does Jesus still transform lives today? He does, absolutely. And we're just going to look at that. And one of the verses that Pastor Dan shared last week was, we were looking at the life of Saul. And we read in Philippians 3, where Saul kind of recounts his life of what it used to be like. And he was, if anybody had a right to kind of persecute the church, if anybody had a right to boast, it was Saul. But he looked at his life and he said, you know what? I count it all as rubbish. That's a good English word. And it's a good legal word in my language. Rubbish. It's garbage. It is worthless compared to knowing Christ. That was his testimony. That was Paul's story when he became converted. Used to be Saul, became Paul. His life was utterly, utterly different. And so I'm just going to invite several people. We're going to start with Jasmine. Jasmine, if you'd like to come up. This is Jasmine Delgado, in case you didn't know. And Jasmine's just going to share something of her story. Do we have the mic? Am I good at that? There it is. So Jasmine, just if you want to introduce yourself, how long you've been coming to Victory Church, and then just tell us a little bit about what it means for you to encounter Jesus Christ.
Okay. I was involved with the youth group for a couple years, maybe 5 years, and I just recently started attending Victory maybe about a year ago. And the story I'm going to share with you today is actually a recent encounter I had with Jesus. And it all happened in the month of August, which was perfect because I'm going into my senior year of high school, and everything that had happened really set me up so I would have to rely 100% on the strength of Jesus Christ. And how that all happened was everything I knew of who I was completely changed. And it all started when I went to Los Angeles with Invisible Children for a leadership summit. And it was fantastic. And I came home and I wanted to be radical. I wanted to live my life for Jesus radically like I was doing in everything else. So I had this idea of who I wanted to be, but I wasn't sure how to accomplish it. And one of the first things that I thought would be a smart idea was to be single. And I made that decision so I would be able to live with just me and God. And so after I had ended my past relationship, I didn't really know who I was anymore because I had relied so heavily on my relationship with my friend and my boyfriend. And now I was starting fresh, and I didn't know what to do. But something God had made better for my life was just making sure that I was still safe and still confident. So I had been really pursuing my Bible and just reading Isaiah. And it just talked about how God was just like destroying all these cities and just tearing everything down. And it was like, why am I reading this? This is really scary. Like, what? But at the end of every chapter, it would just have this little snippet of, so God could make something beautiful from this disaster. And I was just like, okay, when is this going to happen to me now? And God was so great. He introduced me to a friend of mine. His name is Paul. He's from Vancouver. And we had met when he came down to play with his band, and I had the opportunity to hang out with him afterwards. And we just talked for hours. And like, he just bled Bible. Like, you know those people where you look at it and it's like, I want to be like you. And it was the coolest thing. So we just talked, and everything was really God-centered. And I knew at that moment that that was a person who I wanted to be, was the person who was so God-centered and who just couldn't contain herself because she was just so excited about Jesus, like I was with that night. And I remember just talking about like Saul last week, but he had always said, I do the things I don't want to do, and I don't do the things I do want to do. And I feel like I'm really still in that place right now where I know what I need to do and I know who I need to be, but it's just kind of a work in progress. So my hope for myself is just to be able to be a great leader in my senior year and just be able to go off God's strength and not my own.
So just to kind of throw one more question at you, Jasmine, if there were people here who were wondering is it really worth following Jesus? Is it worth that step of faith to say, you know what, I'm in and I'm all in? What would you say to them?
I would say absolutely. Because something God's just been really doing is with my ex-boyfriend now, who never really was involved with the Lord. He has been attending a church and reading his Bible, and that's just been amazing. And for myself, just being more in the Lord. And also, just with my friend Paul, just keep him in his prayers. He was in a terrible accident, a car crash. But and it's absolutely insane because it's like you just meet this person and then they're gone. But God has just been working and it's been amazing. Like thousands of people are coming together and praying. And one of Paul's biggest fears was not being loved. And I just think you're in this position and people are just pouring their love towards for you. And I just think God is crazy and very scary, but he is so able to provide in all of these intense circumstances. So following Jesus is absolutely, definitely worth it because it is an adventure, but he's always there.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Jasmine. Really appreciate you sharing. Thank you. And now James, if we'd like to, this is James. Say hi, James.
Hi, James. Thanks.
How are you doing, James?
I'm pretty nervous.
That's great. No, you know what would be really cool right now?
What's that?
If I was a ventriloquist.
Yeah?
And I could have some fun. But I'm not, so you're okay. So James, just introduce yourself. Where do you live, and how long have you been coming to Victory?
I'm James. I'm from Moose Jaw, originally from Moose Jaw, born and raised. I've been serving the Lord for 2.5 years, I believe, and I just couldn't see myself doing anything else.
Great. So James, just tell us a little bit about what did life look like before you encountered Jesus?
Are you sure you want to get into that?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I started out very, very young in my life. I basically could say I wasted a good portion of my youth years. I've been in and out of incarceration, meetings, group homes, foster homes. Did some really bad things and drinking, drugging, and doing really bad things. And up to, just basically recently, God actually changed my whole life. He kind of smartened me up. I'm kind of a stubborn guy. Yeah.
So tell us, in terms of what does it look like for you to have encountered Jesus? When we talk about we become a Christian, which is a term that's kind of just lost a lot of meaning in some ways. When we're talking about Christian, we're talking about somebody who said, you know what, Jesus is my life now. He's not just part of my life, he is my life. Tell us what that looks like for you.
Well, he is my life. I can't live any millisecond without him. It came so bad in my life that it came close to death that I'm become speechless when I think about it every time. I can't do anything, or I just don't want him not to be in my life. Sorry about this, but it's so amazing how he is. He is my provider. He is my sanction. My life was going nowhere. I was just a wreck. I was either going to jail, or I was going to die, and it was very close for me dying. And if it wasn't for that, kind of a wake-up call, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys right now. Or I'll kind of give you a little testimony of what happened. I went to Regina and was going partying, and we were on our way back home, and I asked to get pulled over so I can... My driver, he takes off. He leaves me on the highway, and I just didn't care. I was like, what happened? Like, what is going on? So I go on the other side of the highway, and right in the middle of the highway. I'm trying to stop cars. And if you ever hear stories about people being on the highway and it's kind of a way to commit suicide, and I remember very vividly that 5 cars went around me and I'm trying to stop them. I'm trying to, go back and forth, stop. I just want to get somewhere warm. And I know God put his hand around me and protected me that night. Somebody, blessed me with a phone call to the RCMP. RCMP picked me up, spent the night in the RCMP barracks. They came in my cell and they're like, "Well, what are you doing on the highway? Like, are you hurt? Like, do you want to kill yourself?" Or, just ask me all these questions. I was like, "No, I'm just wanted to be somewhere warm." And my mom came, picked me up. I gave the biggest hug I've ever gave her in my whole entire life. I told her I loved her because I would have never seen her ever in my life again. I would have been gone, right? And yeah.
So in terms of now that you're following Christ, you say you've been following Jesus for about 2.5 years now. What difference does that look like for you now? What kind of personally do you have any kind of peace? Is there some sort of hope? What does that really look like?
Oh, definitely not the same person I was before. Couldn't even trust myself. I didn't trust nobody. Wanted to hurt people. You know that saying, hurt people, and I was basically that. I didn't care. I basically on a war path of death and destruction. It's not good. And so, yeah.
Well, that's great, James. Thanks for sharing with us. And if you've met James, you've probably shook his hand coming in the door, if he doesn't break your hand when he shakes your hand. Because you do powerlifting or something now? Yeah.
I just recently got into powerlifting. It'll be August. It'll be a whole year that I've been training. November will be a full year since I did my first competition, and I got a provincials coming up in October up in Saskatoon, so I'm looking forward to that. Going to train hard and hopefully qualify for nationals this year.
Wonderful. That's great. Thanks, James. Appreciate that. So just another way that God changes lives. A life heading in one direction, and God turns it around and makes it go in a completely different direction. That's what Encountering Jesus is about. And now I'd like to introduce a very lovely lady. Just so you know, this is my wife. I'm very biased. So, honey, introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Helen. I'm Barry's wife. I'm from England, and we moved here 4 years ago to study at Briarcrest with Barry. And I just want to really share about my first encounter with God. Me and my 4 siblings were brought up in a Christian home, but I was the only one who never backslid. So my parents classed me as the good little girl. But inside, I knew that I wasn't really a good little girl at all, and I felt torn because they labelled me as the good little girl, but I felt like a little rotten sinner, really. And inside, desperately, I really wanted to have the perks of Christianity, like not going to hell, but I really wanted to. I never really wanted to party. I just wanted. My friends just seemed to have such a glamorous life when you didn't have to be a Christian, and really it was from there that I really needed to encounter God. So we were part of a massive youth group, and there was meetings in other churches in other areas, and our youth group was always asked along to these other meetings, which was great because me and my friends were kind of scouting the scenery because we were already bored of the scenery in our own youth group, if you know what I mean. And so we went to these meetings, and what the preacher was saying there really started to impact me and really started to get under my skin a little bit. And from there, I moved to France as a nanny. I went to live in France as a nanny. And when I was in France, I'm a sort of person, I like to be with people all the time. Quality time, and my love language is words of affirmation. Went to live in France. I got no words of affirmation because they're all French. And not that there's anything wrong with French, but they couldn't speak my language. But and I got no quality time because I was on my own all the time. And it's there that these words that the preacher was saying came back to me. I was on my own, and God was just starting to whisper these words. And my parents were really faithful Christians, and we saw lots of amazing stories, but I'd never encountered any stories of my own. And when I was coming back from France, I had to travel from the south of France right to Paris on my own, and it was one of these trains that was a non-stop train. It just was direct from the south to the north, and I heard lots of bad things happened in these trains because you're in little compartments just with a few other people on your own. And when I stepped into my compartment, it was already full, and it was all men. And I remember going in there petrified that I had to have 8 hours just in a compartment with some men. And I remember at that time saying, God, I really need to encounter you. I really need to know that you're real. If you're real, would you take all these men out of this compartment and bring in, a lovely couple, a young girl and a guy? And at that, all these men stood up and walked out of the compartment, and a young couple came in, a lady came in, and a young, about 19-year-old guy. And he spoke to me in English. He said to me, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Paris because that's where it's going to. And he said, I'll tell you when to get off the train. And when you get off the train, I'll carry your bags for you. And he got my bags off the train in Paris and took me to my dad. And I knew then that God was real. It was the first time that I'd not lived under my parents' faith. I'd lived under my faith. And no longer did I want to have just the perks of going to heaven. I wanted to live every day for Jesus.
Fantastic. So, Han, what would you say to somebody who's thinking, is it worth being a Christian? Is it?
Oh, it's worth
really
every
worth
single breath. I couldn't live one single day without Jesus. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, honey. Okay, so just another way that we can encounter Jesus, that he's in our lives, that he's not just this thing outside somewhere, that he's a real part of our lives. And kind of our last contestant, Jason, if you'd like to make your way up. Say hi, Jason. Okay. How are you doing? Marvelous. So, Jason, if you want to introduce yourself, just tell us where you're from and how long you've been coming here.
My name is Jason. From British Columbia. I guess I've been coming here a little under a year. Year in September, I guess.
Yep. So, Jason, as everybody else have been talking about what it means to have Jesus in your life, just tell us a little bit about your life before Jesus, kind of BC.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got it.
I got it. I lived the life of an addict for many years. From the age of 15, I was in and out of jail and living in rebellion. But in reality, I was just like a lot of people out there. I did whatever I could to make me feel good, and as a result, my life was meaningless and hopeless. I can honestly say that if my life wasn't like it was, and I was a good person, I probably would have never realized that my life was evil. My mother became a Christian when I was about 10 years old. The gospel was nothing but foolishness to me. And when I would hear about Jesus, it would actually make me angry because it was ludicrous to me that a man could be God. I basically thought that all religions were foolish and Christianity was just another religion. Even though I hated Christianity, that never stopped many Christians from approaching me and showing kindness to me. Thank God. I didn't want it and surely didn't deserve it. In my life, I was becoming increasingly paranoid and delusional. Violence and drugs were taking a toll on my life. And I knew that the end was near. I was scared about what that end might be because I didn't know what would come after death. So it was actually because of my interactions with Christians that I began to wonder whether God was really real or whether he cared about me. When I was alone, I started praying. I would say, I would say, hey, God, are you real? Are you there? Why don't you speak to me? Though I never heard anything audible, I know that God started to speak to me at that time and answer me. My life began, sorry.
Okay, just take your time.
My life began to change drastically at that time. I began to go to recovery, and I started going to church, and things began to really change, although, it was a process. And, I didn't understand the whole Jesus concept, but, again, I just called out to God. I said, I don't understand Jesus. I don't understand why I need Jesus. But, God, if you are Jesus, then show me, And, I can't explain it, but, through reading the Bible and prayer and worship and other people praying for me, he really showed me. So, it's just, yeah.
Fantastic. So kind of now looking at your life after encountering Jesus, what's different?
Well, I've been a Christian for 7 or 8 years now. My life looks a lot different, although, a lot of times I don't, feel much different. I'm still, evil in many ways, I guess. But today I have a hope and a future, and that makes all the difference in the decisions I make on a day-to-day basis. So, after one good decision, added on to another, my life began to look a lot different in 8 years. And, I was very lucky that I had a chance to go to a place called Teen Challenge. It didn't happen right away, but, a pastor at the church that I used to go to convinced me after a few years that I should go there, because I'd mess up periodically. So I worked there for a couple of years. They let me work there. And I moved out to Moose Jaw to go to Briarcrest for a semester. And I got married in December. And, yeah, it's just, it's a lot of stuff, a lot different. Sometimes I feel, quite overwhelmed, But, yeah, this is it.
So
Yeah.
just tell us, what are you involved in now?
Well, right now, I'm a student at SciAS. I've been going to SciAS for the last 6 months. But, my passion is recovery. That's what brought me to Victory, because Victory has a great recovery program that meets downstairs on Thursday nights. It's called Tuesday nights. That's what I have a wife for. But I met some really great people there, and I was just looking for a recovery, a Christ-centered recovery program to go to here in Moose Jaw, and so my passion is recovery. I get to do a little bit of work down at Riverside Mission on on Thursday nights, me and my wife and some other people from Victory do a games night down there. And I'm just, hoping that one day I'll be able to be part of someone else's decision for Christ and also a decision for recovery.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Thanks, Jason. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. So that's 4 people, all who've had their lives transformed by Jesus. What a personal encounter with Christ actually does. You know, it's not just something that we do. We don't just come to church week after week because it's the right thing to do, you know, that'll earn us some points with God. We come because Jesus has transformed our lives. And anybody here who has given their life to Christ will testify that it's different. When you come to Christ, it's different. It's meant to be different. And if you're wondering what it means to follow Christ, if you're just asking those questions, then keep asking. Talk to somebody. Come and talk to one of us before you leave today. Talk to somebody who maybe brought you to church. Ask them, why do I need to follow Christ? Should I really follow Christ? Because anybody who's ever given their life fully to Christ will say, absolutely yes. It is the best thing that you will ever do. So I'm just going to pray. I'm just going to invite Jason and Charmaine back up just to get themselves ready. And I'll pray while they're doing that. I'll just give him his little stool back. So let's pray. Father, we do want to thank you that you sent Jesus Christ, that you knew that we were helpless in and of ourselves, that we cannot do it. We cannot rescue ourselves. We cannot save ourselves. We just keep digging the hole deeper. And Father, we want to thank you that you stepped in and you made the way and you rescued us. Nope. You rescued us through Jesus Christ. And Father, it's as we put our faith in him that we are saved, that we are delivered, that we are changed and transformed. And our lives are not perfect, but you are making them perfect. And so, Father, I just pray that anybody who's wondering about Jesus, that you'll open their eyes, you'll open their hearts, you'll help them to believe and to see what Jesus could do in their life. We ask it in your precious name. Amen.
Wow, what a cool service. Hey, this is fun. So, Jasmine and James and Helen and Jason, thank you for sharing that. That is so cool. I feel like I didn't know you at all before today, but I feel like family here. Because I have the same salvation story that you guys have. And so even though we live in different parts of the country, this is still home. This is still our family, and you guys have a lovely church. We just celebrated 3 years married last week. Anybody married more than 3 years? Yeah. Hey, so you're more expert than we are. We keep finding ways to get on each other's nerves, new ways, get upset, get stressed out about each other in life or money or whatever. But something that we've really been understanding and discovering about God is that for us to really succeed, we need joy in our life. We need joy more than anything else in life, actually. We can get worried about the roof over our head or clothes or groceries or whatever, but if we don't have joy, life is not worth it. And I know the stories that you heard today, those are stories of living without that joy and then discovering joy. And there's a verse in Isaiah 58 that is saying, actually, was it Jasmine that you were talking about reading all sorts of stuff in Isaiah? It's a good book. And the verse says, and your darkness will be as bright as noon. And it's talking about when you feed the hungry and you give to the poor. So when we position ourselves in a place to love on someone else, give to someone else, share our life with someone else, and not worry about us, that's when the joy comes. that's when that joy kind of sneaks up on us from behind and arrives and it unlocks something that God has for each of us. So we have scars, you have scars, and Jesus took on some scars when he took that cross, and he didn't have to, but he did it because he looked at us and saw what we would be without joy. He saw what we would be, and we were meant to be clean, and we were meant to be pure and new. But he took that scar, he took that cross because he saw us. He saw us, and if his scars could tell a story, it would be a great love story.
We saw a blameless man taking undeserved blame, the weight of the world on sinless shoulders. We saw the blood-red dust as his life drained down that cross. The end of it all, it seemed so certain. If the stars could speak, what would they say? If the stars could speak, what would they say? If the stars had voices, what would they claim? We saw your sightless eyes be made new for the first time, beholding the beauty of a rainbow. We saw your lame legs stand, take one step, then start to dance, believing again in second chances. If the stars could speak, what would they say? If the stars could speak, what would they say? If the stars had voices, what would they claim?